State prison officials say that San Quentin's death row is antiquated, overcrowded, and unsafe. They're asking the legislature for $220 million to build a new one. So for the first time in more than 30 years, death row's doors were recently opened up to a dozen news people, and Chris Blatchford was one of them.
It's been called the Big House and the Q, the legendary San Quentin State Penitentiary, home to nearly 6,000 burglars, thieves, rapists, robbers, and murderers. It's the oldest prison in the state, but most famous for what happens behind this thick iron door, where 200 men and 4 women since 1938 have been strapped down in this death chamber and executed. 196 by gas, 8 by lethal injection. Whether you might like it or not, this is the place in California where we have decided to kill the killers. Welcome to the original death row. It was built in 1932. Until a recent jailhouse altercation, 4-time killer Stanley "Tookie" Williams, one of the early Crip gangsters, was among those who lived here. Is it clear? It's a self-contained unit totally isolated from the rest of the prison, relatively quiet and clean. First designed to house only 68 inmates, it still holds that many now.
Inmates prefer to be up here.
Only condemned inmates with years of good behavior are permitted to live here. Under the watchful eye of a few guards, they take themselves in and out of their own cells, pick up mail and packages at a central desk, go to the shower without an escort, or up to the exercise yard. Believe it or not, there is a waiting list to get in here, explains Warden Jean Woodford.
When there's a cell available, then they're able to move up here, which is rare. There's rarely a cell available up here.
Rare because the death row population has exploded to more than 600 inmates in the past few decades. Most of the overflow now goes into East Block. Each prisoner lives alone in a 40-square-foot cell. Hundreds of inmates piled into this 5-tier unit that was intended for the general population. 2 officers are assigned to each tier. 5 others on search and escort duty. Prisoners here are cuffed and escorted every time they're moved to chapel, law library, and the exercise yard. It's labor-intensive for the staff, says Lieutenant Don Graham.
And that can take approximately 2 hours to run about 250 to 330 people on any given day.
And that's just here to the yard, the place San Diego child killer David Westerfield never goes. He stays inside his East Block cell. Officer Vernell Critton.
The inmate population is very sensitive to those people that do harm to children.
In straight talk, here on the yard, Westerfield could easily get stabbed with a prison-made knife called a shank. In fact, sex offenders and gang rivalries force guards to segregate this yard into 6 different groups, all of them killers.
And we have to separate those for safety issues, and that makes up the majority of the population.
Most are permitted 15-minute calls on a phone that rolls from cell to cell. The same cell where each meal is hand-delivered by officers, in addition to canteen items.
So it's time-consuming, but I don't think that we've figured out a better way yet.
Inmates in total receive up to 1,600 food packages a year.
They're allowed 30 pounds in each package.
And another 2,000 special purchase orders. It all has to be searched. That's Officer Kelly Paniza's job.
Well, we're looking for anything they're not supposed to have. Drugs and weapons, pornography, money.
And stacks of legal documents have to be made available to all inmates appealing their cases. Hundreds of cases.
And you see we're running out of room here with the amount of space we have.
But it's just 3 feet of space along these catwalks that are of more concern to guards. It makes them an easy target for inmate darts and spears, not to mention gassing, inmates throwing their own feces and urine at guards. It happened to Officer Tobin while delivering lunch to an inmate.
Feces and urine in my face, mouth, ears, and when it hit the wire mesh, it was like a shotgun blast.
Do that to a correctional officer and an inmate ends up here at the adjustment center. It's a second overflow area that houses about 100 of the worst of the condemned inmates. A true murderer's row with the likes of serial killer Richard Ramirez, known as the Night Stalker, and a scary collection of violent prison gang warriors. Sergeant Sam Robinson.
Their staff assaulted, their inmate assaulted, they've attempted escapes. They are the worst of the worst.
Open 4.
Even while double locked behind solid metal doors, the threatening nature of these inmates seems ever present. In this other section, where there are no solid doors, officers walk only behind this heavy shield for protection. Here, guards always wear protective helmets and vests and have a canister of pepper spray ready to blast. On the exercise yard, 36 cages are in place where dangerous inmates have walk-alone status. Lieutenant Art Munoz says anything can happen here.
My main concern is to make sure that in the 8-hour shift, all our staff go home safely.
And administrators say that's getting harder to do. There are now 627 men on death row, and 3 more are coming every month. The worst killers in the state, several decades worth, now housed in what the warden believes is an outdated facility.
I think it gets increasingly more dangerous.
And arguably, those headed here to the death chamber are among the most motivated to escape or even kill again. In San Quentin, Chris Blatchford, Fox 11 News.